Did I do this movie a disservice by watching The Guns of Navarone before I watched From Navarone? I don't know, but I think it impacted my experience of this movie negatively. So if you're going to see this movie, I would suggest maybe don't watch The Guns of Navarone before you see this. Now, the first time I saw this movie was on TV, and it was in a TV guide, where they reviewed this one, and didn't give it a, stellar review or anything like that, but it had a small little trivia to it, which I found to be very interesting and a bit, It claimed that this movie is the favorite movie of none other than the King of Sweden, Carl XVI Gustav. He, by the way, his favorite actor is also Steven Seagal, and he has actually had private dinners with the King of Sweden. If that sounds a little bonkers, then fine, so be it. Now, let's take a look at why this movie is not as good or is not as well regarded as its predecessor. This is From Navarone. Slightly recasted versions of the original gang that blew up the Guns of Navarone is back, and they're being sent into Yugoslavia to try to find a German spy who has infiltrated the Yugoslavian partisans. Now, they joined forces with a ranger team, I think it was from the United States, which also includes Carl Weathers and Harrison Ford. However, the plane is shot down, and a now slightly crippled versions of the Navarone gang has to, try to survive here. Will they be able to blow up the bridge? Will they be able to get back home? Will Barbara Bach show her tits? So many questions, and I'm not too bothered by any of them, except maybe Barbara Bach's tits. But this movie lacks a lot of stuff. This is just such a step down from The Guns of Navarone. Despite this movie having a fairly okay budget, I mean, $40 million in today's value, it still looks a little ramshackled. Action sequences going from pretty okay to not so great, and the acting is a bit spotty. I mean, Edward Fox plays Miller in this one instead of David Niven, and David Niven was a little bit silly, but he just had so much charm and so much cadence to him that you kind of bought it. But Edward Fox just comes across as such a goof and such a silly, it doesn't feel like he's taking this seriously. And Robert Shaw has done a lot of very good movies over the years, and he has been very good in lots of movies, but this is not one of his best ones. This is kind of an okay movie. This is one of his last performances before his death, and it's a little bit of a sour note to go out on. And Harrison Ford feels a little bit uninterested by all of this. And Barbara Bach is only here because, she was Ringo Starr's wife, I guess. Her acting ability is not that great, to be honest. And the story is a bit of a hodgepodge of far-fetched and silly and kind of unbelievable kind of plot devices that just, catapults one thing to another. And I usually give a lot of lenience to this kind of war adventure movies like The Guns of Navarone or Where Eagles Dare or Kelly's Heroes or Von Ryan's Express. Movies like that, I love them. I love them so much. And that is why I'm having them to a higher standard. I mean, I think that the main reason why I don't like this movie is the fact that it has aged so terribly. I mean, sure, the movies I just mentioned, they have aged too, but they still retains some kind of originality, and it still retains some kind of charm to it, which makes me, forgive them and love them anyway. Plus, those movies are fucking awesome. But this one features a lot of sequences that we have seen before in other movies, but it has been done better. It has been done more professionally. It has been done more grandiose and spectacle. Despite the fact that this movie is, directed by Guy Hamilton, who has done, a bunch of James Bond films, and he's an experienced director, and he should probably, have done a good job with this one. But it never truly takes off. I'm never invested in anything like that. The movie has pretty okay pacing, and it has some sequences that has some tension to it, but there are not too many of them. And the entirety of the discussion of who is trying to betray us is one of the dumbest I've ever seen. I mean, it is easier to spot the German traitor in this one than, you know, coming up with the idea that maybe this guy Wormtongue in this, you know, court of Thor-looking motherfuckers is maybe a traitor. Or maybe, you know, in The Simpsons, maybe Johnny the Snitch or whatever his name was, maybe is the one who's being snitching instead of, you know, Johnny Tightlips. And it is almost as dumb as the entire thing with the firewood in the briefcase with, you know, the explosives and all that goofy stuff that, you know, went on in the beginning of the movie. It's hard to argue which one of those were the dumbest, but this isn't a bad movie, but it is just such a lackluster movie and you don't really care. By the way, why isn't our king's favorite movie The Guns of Navarone instead of this herky-jerky piece of, you know, underwhelming war adventure movie? I love Alistair MacLean's, you know, wartime stories that he tells, but this is just not one of these. According to a guy I met in Panama, the book For Stand From Navarone that was published 68, I think, is a pretty okay book, but the story is completely different from what the, you know, movie ended up being. Now, I haven't read the book, so I don't know, so I have to take his word for it. In a nutshell, For Stand From Navarone is an underwhelming but ultimately harmless movie. If you are a completionist and want to see, you know, all the wacky war adventures, there are worse than this ones, but don't waste your time if you know, think you're going to see a movie that is equal to the fantastic Guns of Navarone, because it is clearly not. I don't know if I'm being harsh on this movie by giving it 31 points, because I saw this movie, you know, directly after seeing the Guns of Navarone, and maybe that damaged the movie, maybe it didn't, I don't know. But regardless of that, when I saw the movie the first time when I was 12, 13 years old, I basically felt the same thing that I felt now. It is a totally okay movie in parts, but there are too many silly stuff and there are too many underwhelming stuff. The movie just feels like a murky late 70s movie, and while not being directly terrible, the movie has a quite visible glass ceiling to it that prevents it from going anywhere above a good shoulder shrug, in my opinion. By the way, is there anybody out there who themselves or know somebody who thinks that this movie is better than its predecessor? Comment below and I'll see you next time from, well, so-and-so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.